Hey folks, thanks so much for joining our Monday Mindshare and back with us again. First time for 24. It's been a while since we've had you on the show. Welcome back, Matt Kerr. How you doing there?
Thank you. It has been a while, and yeah, as you say, it's a pleasure to be back. So thanks for hosting.
Mate, I don't know if that's a fake background behind you, but it looks pretty good down there, the New Zealand summer, I gotta say, some of your social posting.
I tell you, it's dragging out. It's a good thing. We've certainly had a better summer than last year. So blessed to have some good heat and heat that we can actually train in. So yeah, it's been good so far.
Oh, that's cool. Well, yeah, I mean, it's obviously you're about to head into the winter, but you've got one big one, of course, straight in front of you, and we're going to talk about Ironman New Zealand, in a little while. But how's the legs? How's the body? All set for a couple of weeks' time?
Yeah, well, as they are at the end of an Ironman block, they're the body's getting a little. Yeah, we're getting to the end and definitely feeling it. But no, things are shaping up really nicely. It's yeah, it's been again no sort of build or prep comes without challenges.
Yeah,
As has this one.
great.
But I think I'm confident in saying that I feel that I'm at my best that I've been in terms of
Wow.
pre-race performance. So
Oh,
I'm
wow.
feeling confident about this one and going into it nice and strong. So a few
That's
more sessions to get nailed this week, and then yeah, it'll be really stripping out some volume, ready for a couple of weeks time.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we'll jump into that. And maybe for everyone's benefit, if you haven't been tracking the Matt Kerr show, let me just kind of rewind a little. And I like to, I guess, Matt, go way back to, I guess it was like 2018 or 19, a 10 and a half hour Ironman back then. And over subsequent years, I guess the big stake in the ground was the Utah World Champs when you were still an age grouper. And, took it out then. I think you're 22nd overall, 8 hours 40, and a flash Ironman, sorry, marathon in that, particularly on that course, which is, as you well know better than anyone, it's not flat, but at 2 hour 57. We will talk more about your marathon. I did see on your PTO standings about 183 at the moment, I think, but it seems like your swim is a little stronger than maybe some of the other pros out there. And then after Utah, you went into Kona with a massive block and in great shape, and obviously a horrific accident in the middle of the race. And maybe from there we can chat with you now on like 2023. You've had a stretch where it's been a real challenge on the rebuild, but why don't you talk us through 2023?
Yeah, I mean, 2023 was it was officially my first year as pro, right?
Right.
And going into it a little bit unknown, but also with the mindset that it was really a growth year for learning, I think.
Sure.
Um, and it started out quite rough with a little bit of sickness, which
That's right.
saw, I had to cancel a race there early on. And then Ironman New Zealand rolled around, and it was really a just in time prep. It was just in time prep with, um, you know, an okay finish, fifth overall. And we were happy with that.
Yeah.
But that was kind of, we only had a certain amount of time and got there just in time. And then yeah, went into Cairns. Cairns was good. Good swim, good run. Not really a flash bike, but again, learned from that. And then it was we had Ironman Canada all planned out, which I did most of my prep for in Australia, Sunshine Coast,
Yeah.
and went in thinking or knowing that I was in pretty good form, and unfortunately, just a bunch of circumstances with the wildfires up there, and
Fires.
and I actually saw a race cancellation. So,
That was crazy, wasn't
which,
it? I just
which
felt so
was
so so bad for you then. It was just a shocker.
super hard to comprehend. And I guess from that point onwards, from that Canada cancellation, it was really a stretch of that back end of the year and a hard learning 2023, if we want to say that. With Canada, I mean the up was that I didn't come out of it completely broken, and I'd put together a good training block, but actually I didn't get to showcase what I'd trained for really. Um,
Well, hey, it's not all
and
lost.
then
I mean, let's look at. I mean, there's some amazing, again, like you say, first year as pro, and you come into Ironman New Zealand, place fifth overall, 827. I've got you down for here. In fact, I'm just looking at your records here. Pretty much since Utah, you've been running sub 3 hour marathons in each Ironman. I mean, it just shows you the strength that you've got, your aerobic base that's still there. And I mean, like you said, I mean, 433 in Ironman New Zealand and Cairns 447. Cairns is a little deceiving as a race course, bike course, I should say. It kind of on Google looks somewhat flat, but it's not at all, is it?
absolutely not. No, no, and it's not your typical Australian hot mix roads that you get in like WA or other places like that. So it is actually quite a challenging course. And you're starting out in a very hot swim in a wetsuit. So granted that it's actually over above threshold of wetsuit, but it's the fact of the jellies there that they have you in wetsuits.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're cooking from the start really. But an awesome event, and actually, pancake flat run, so you can really kind of settle into what you need to on the run. Um, yeah, so Cairns was good. It was and I was hoping to build on that into Canada. Obviously, that didn't happen. And yeah, I guess the back end of the year just had a number of more 70.3 races that it was just learning and
Yeah,
learning
yeah,
how the pro fields race, how important, particularly in a 70.3 races, swimming in the front or as close to the front as you can to
yeah.
stay in touch there on the bike and be competitive on the bike and a bunch of complications with mechanicals, learning about those mechanicals and actually preventing them in a couple of races came to sort of play there. A few personal issues, and then I came into Melbourne in November, really trying to push for what I had lost over those few races from Canada, really.
Yeah.
And I guess I just got to a point where I pushed too hard and I took a little bit of the fun out of the sport, I think. And I actually DNF'd that race partway through the bike,
That's right. I recall
and
that. Yeah, yeah,
which I'm not. I look back on it and go, how did that actually happen? How did things stack up so much that I made a decision to not finish that race and
yeah.
and uh, yeah, just took a bit of time to reset. Came home from Australia, got back in with friends and family, and that are close to me back home. Got back in nice close contact with my coach rather than working across the globe,
Right.
and just had a bit of a reset on a few things. And then came down with COVID right before
Well, I
Taupo.
mean, like it all adds up, right? I mean, the mental stress of living away, a pro, first year as pro, and obviously just infections rife through, frankly, doesn't matter which part of the world you're in. So maybe, yeah, hard to swallow, but probably in a sense not surprising. Like just a lot on your shoulders this first year, right?
Agreed. And I think that little bit of pro pressure adds to it too. And it's like you got to reflect on that and go, well, it's got to be good pressure, but it's up to you to make it good pressure if that makes sense. And I think by the end of it, I was actually turning that to be a negative sort of mindset across the whole sport, which I had to try and find the fun again in it, which I
Yeah,
have since coming
yeah,
home,
yeah.
and just re-spark it.
Right. I mean, that was kind of interesting. I remember Cairns, we were watching it. I mean, sitting here in the US watching it live, but like they had the overview of the swim. And usually Cairns water is kind of aqua blues. Well, it was brown and what have you. And I just wonder, like, as you got onto the bike and with the heat, like you say, it's a wetsuit and then the heat of the bike, heat of the run, that wasn't a factor also, something maybe that was in the water. I don't know. But even to still throw out a sub 3 hour marathon when the gut, was in warfare mode with you. So I thought it was awesome. And yeah, the mechanicals was that in Cairns or New Zealand, Matt?
That was in Let's Go Malaysia and Sunshine
Ah,
Coast. So it
okay.
was a couple of mechanicals there, which was the same reoccurring problem of rubbing brakes. So
Okay.
you're putting out
Okay.
just wasting power, which I learned very quickly from after it happened the second time, is to not making that mistake again. So, but yeah, back to Cairns, it's like, I think that truly speaks to having a decent, or having a good aerobic base, has been able to
Right.
rely upon that. Yeah, I didn't have the best bike, and actually had not much nutrition and lost probably quite a lot. But I think to come back and have a reasonable run and try and pull things back, just speaks to that kind of zone 2 sort of work, and the work that has been invested in the many years before that.
No question. And again, just reflecting back again on Utah at 257, and like, that's just so up and down that course. But I did have flashbacks when you said there about the mechanicals. I do remember as a teenager coming out of the water in first and coming through T1 with the bike, and then jumping on the bike and putting the foot on the pedals and the chains off the pedals, and you're just free spinning. So that was my amateur hour introduction also. So it happens to us all. Well, cool. So yeah, I mean, 2023, it was rough, but I think everyone's in your corner, and obviously we know what you're capable of, just looking at some of your A races that you've executed well. As you come into 2024 though, maybe we can go through swim and the bike and the run. Like, what are some of the, changes that you're being kind of focused on? I mean, when I look at your times, I feel like the swim and the run is, with the best of them. It feels like the bike is where some of the other professional athletes have just had years of time in the saddle, right? What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I have a bit of a swim background. So the swim is there. It's about now, refining that to be able to swim as close to the front or on the back of that front pack, and
Right.
conserve some energy. And that's really the difference between age group swim racing and pro racing, is being able to stay in touch with what you can on the swim, and stay as far as front as possible. Yeah, I mean, the bike has developed exponentially over the past many years from age group racing, and again, trying to be as far forward as you possibly can in that field. But I think in the training, we've seen a significant shift into how we approach that.
How's
And
that? Like what? Like what do you
that
mean?
I mean, the base of being able to ride a power is still stands, right? But I think having the ability to be able to fluctuate and burn a couple of matches when you need to stay in touch with potentially a pack that might be surging, needs to be a factor, and that can only really be simulated in training.
Yeah,
So
right.
when it comes to the race, that if that does happen, you have the confidence that you can push a little bit harder for a shorter duration. Now, we know that duration is not going to last forever and ever on
Right.
180K, but
Yeah.
it's a thing, right? It does happen. And being able to train that in training, and try and simulate that as best as possible, is something I guess I was never doing in age group racing.
What does that translate to in training? Like, is that like in the middle of just long day zone 2 sessions, you're doing some like threshold type work, or is it something more specific than that?
Yeah, I guess like there's threshold work that happens outside of race specific blocks as well. But it predominantly happens in your race simulation scenarios,
Okay.
and possibly, and putting more of those efforts around like the back end of those simulations, or priming some of your intervals with some higher intensity watts and power, and then settling back into some Ironman power.
What is I'm not sure just if you recall the records you have of like when you first started in the sport, what your average power is, and today, like if you're looking at um I guess top of zone 3 into zone 4, like what type of power now, like what's the evolution you've seen on power?
Yeah, I mean, I was racing Ironman at around the let's say 260, 270, mid 270s, normalized, and I'm trying to hold that with at least variability as possible. I guess now we're looking at that 290
Wow.
thereabouts, but with considerable fluctuation within power. I mean, the principle of least variability still applies, but there are going to be, like I just said, certain times where you do need to make a
Right.
move, or
Right.
you do need to go with what you've got. So, yeah, the power's definitely come up. But there's also the ability to be able to fluctuate that a little bit more than what you probably typically do in age group racing.
The other side of this, Matt, is like I think a lot of races in the Ironman circuit are not overly hilly, but obviously Nice is, but Hawaii itself is not a flat course at all. And aside from people surging, obviously there's just a lot of tactics going on in racing as you kind of go through those rolling hills in Kona, right?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And I think, being able to train yourself that you don't push above considerably, like 50 or 60 watts above, because that'll come back and it's not going to end well, really.
Yeah,
So
I found
I
that
think
out on
that's
my 70.3 there in Hawaii. I found that out the hard way. And that was only 70.3, not an Ironman. And
uh,
but even still, like in the pool or on the track or just on the roads, like running, is there, as you think about 2024 over 23, has there been any other notable shifts and change you and Grant have been focused on?
I think in the running aspect, it's been able to sustain good mechanics, good form for a longer duration, and just be stronger in that area. Um, I mean, the accumulation of volume naturally is, and
Helps.
you want to be progressing. That is going to be hopefully going in upward space, but at the same time, we've put a lot of time into running off the road on the trails,
Oh, nice.
being strong on the hills, and just trying to spend a little bit more time around the mechanics and stability of, I guess being a little bit more stable through the hip girdle, through the hip area, because when it gets to, you know, 30, 35, 36K of that
Yeah,
marathon, things tend to slip a little bit.
the
And
wheels fall off. Yeah.
yeah, so try not to let them fall off too much. More so.
Mate, we're not going to see you in Chamonix at UTMB since you're doing all this trail work. You're not going to sneak in a 100 miler with us.
No,
Tarawera on the weekend down your way.
they did. Yeah, it was an amazing event. Lots going on, and some phenomenal finishes. But yeah, not yet, not yet. Never say never,
Cool.
but not definitely not yet.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome race. Well, I guess just as part of that, thinking about you've been with your coach for many years. I guess my question would be, are you looking at complementing your coaching and mentoring with like a broader array of specialists working with you these days, or it's the one coach, or how are you kind of playing that as you kind of evolve as a professional athlete?
Yeah, I mean, the scope always is always there to extend that. I think where that's been highlighted most significantly is the time in need, and that sort of was in that November December period when actually, working globally, across the Tasman with him was just, it wasn't difficult, but there was a
Yeah.
better way to do it, and that was to come home, reconnect, and that really proved dividends for me. So I think at this point in time, what's working, we believe, and we'll soon see in 2 weeks, is what we've got. His role is really important at this point in time, to actually go just lay off a little bit, and I think that's really important where that coach sort of title lies right here at,
Right.
2 weeks out from a race, and he's doing a lot of that at the moment because the tendency can be things have been really good. Let's kind of not make any mistakes from here on in. And I think it's really, you get a little bit tunnel vision as an athlete to want to keep trying to push
Yeah.
the boat.
Yeah.
And that's potentially where things can go a little wrong in those last final weeks when we don't want it to, right?
No, yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah,
But you were doing
his
a
role
bunch
is
of
crucial at the
it
moment.
looked like you're doing a bunch of aerodynamic work on the tracks, maybe 2 or 3 months back, maybe 4 months back. I was thinking, that's a new kind of bow in your well, sorry, string in your bow. I didn't think you'd been doing a lot of that before, right?
No, we haven't. I mean, there's always room to explore, and we're always open to exploring things like that, and the opportunity presented to get some numbers from, I
Right.
guess, yeah, some of that mechanical stuff that we were dealing with, and bike, etc. So yeah, we've been playing with a little bit of that. It's not the be all and end all, but again, it's more evidence, it's more data that we can just gather,
Sure.
and working with specialists in that field. So again, it was a great opportunity, and we took some stuff from it. So
Interesting. The as coming into the kind of pro network, if I can put it that way, is there a network in the spirit of like the pros themselves are open to dialogue, sharing, discussing, like if you got opens and issues or asking about stuff, or is it a fairly closed shop in triathlon? I am like professional triathlon.
yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. I think you tend to congregate more with maybe your local athletes a little bit more and share from that perspective, or your close sort of social group that are in that pro area.
Right.
And there's no hesitation around sharing to the degree of what the athlete wants to share, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like, the most sharing that goes on is probably at the moment those relationships that I have with the other Kiwi pro athletes, and maybe a couple of Australian athletes as well. So yeah, but when it comes to on the road racing, it's
Every man for
yeah, that's
himself.
a little bit forgotten.
That's very diplomatic. Let's talk about this ramp or this block coming into Ironman New Zealand. And maybe you can even just for everyone, just give us a sense for, is this the A race of the year? Is this a feeder potentially into Kona? But regardless of that, let's talk about the block that comes into that in the spirit of volume and time. What's typical at the moment, or at the height of the blocks, if you will, coming into a professional Ironman A race? What does it look like?
So I guess talking to the present right here, right now, it's totally not about accumulating volume or hours. That's not a thing anymore. That was a thing before, let's say, 3 weeks out from the race, 4 weeks out from the race. It's now about uh, executing those sessions, those key final sessions, and the leading sessions to the race. Now I know that I wouldn't be able to do what I need to do tomorrow or the day after because I've got key sessions on those days without the weeks prior to that. But before that, it was just developing enough of intensity, enough of volume and load to be able to get to where I am today. And then before that, there was an aerobic training block, and that typically always happens for us before any race prep. Then we get into what we are now, which is a race block. I mean, things have definitely evolved. I look back from my first Ironman block and what that looked like. My very first Ironman, and it was just purely volume and aerobic work. There was not much intensity in there at all. So I
Yeah.
was being able to withstand the time on the feet, the time on the bike, the pool swimming, and just develop a base there. Whereas now, it's a lot more strategic around, dropping intensity in. This block has given, we've done a lot more, I guess, periodized rest recovery. So blocked out the training into, I guess, smaller, shorter training camps, 4 to 5 day windows, and then having a significant 3 day period off. And when I say off,
Hmm.
it's still you're still doing stuff, you're still
Yeah.
working, but it's mainly zone 2 stuff.
Right.
And it's eliminating those higher intensity sessions where you're accumulating damage and fatigue. And I guess the reason that we've kind of opted for that approach is to have a bit of a good balance. So when it's on, it's on. And when it's off, you can enjoy other things in life and what's going on, and
Yeah.
balance it that way. And also prevent the accumulative fatigue that we see
Right.
across a typical like 6-7 week Ironman block. Typically, you get to the end and you can get what you need done, but the fatigue is significantly more because
Yeah.
of the many weeks you've just invested. And then we try and taper out as quick as we can in that sort of 7 to 10 day window and just hope that everything gets shredded and the fatigue is gone. So we've been a little bit more, I guess specific in the recovery for this race.
It's kind of there's a couple of questions there. One would be is as an age grouper, the way you used to approach it, i.e., mostly just volume. Do you think that is probably what would you say, more appropriate for the time that an age grouper has and how you could spend your time training for an Ironman as an age grouper versus a professional sport where the intensity is just a whole new level and therefore demands, obviously a very different focused approach to training. What's your thoughts there?
I think you got to reflect on the level of intensity you wish to race at, right? And the performance where you want to fall. If you're an elite level age grouper, there's got to be some intensity in the
Right,
training, right?
right,
There has to
right,
be. If you're looking for a podium, if you're looking for
right.
let's
Sure.
say, your top three or whatever. But I've really enjoyed this kind of blocking approach for this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And I think it actually fits really well into, like, let's just go with, I don't mean to title them, but like an age grouper that works a Monday to Friday. They go to work for that time, and then they
Exactly.
typically have their Saturday and Sunday off.
Yeah.
Maybe they might drop a Friday or a Monday closer to the race just to give them a little bit more
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I've done that with a couple of athletes one in particular that is again at the elite level of her field, going into Ironman New Zealand and works work. She's busy. She works some big hours during the week.
Yeah.
And we've gone, actually, let's take the stress off, take the pressure off. We've only got X amount of time during the week. We'll do what we need to. But let's have a couple of heavy weekends, and two or three of those, and work when we're on. But otherwise, it's really treating the week like a good recovery time and just ticking over that zone 2 stuff.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I know that adds up. You obviously when we first met and then, you went into really, I guess, optimizing fat oxidation and more along the lines of periodized approaches, both in nutrition and in your training. But you're kind of well known for, and maybe Grant's well known too, for some of these 8-hour fasted rides and things like that. Um, do you still, I mean, obviously during the zone 2 period of the season, have you altered that approach to just base building and aerobic development capacity building? Or are you kind of even tuning how you approach zone 2 development?
No, the answer is no. That has not changed.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that doesn't change through, I guess, the time I'm in now.
So
Of
you're
course,
still
there's sessions.
doing long, like very long and somewhat low carbohydrate zone 2 work.
Hmm. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
And where that fits in, we talk as long, like I was in a race specific block. There was a time and a place for 6 hour rides. There's not now. The longest ride I'll probably ride is 5.5 hours, and if that is, I did that on the weekend. I had a 5.5 hour ride. It was typically zone 2. I had some efforts in there which were really short, like 6 by 10 minutes at
Right.
290 watts.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was my long ride for the week, and that was entirely fasted.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
but then on the other end of the spectrum, I've got a full race ride tomorrow, which is, I've got 5 by 45 minutes, and they're at 290 watts, 300 watts pushing with some variation. So it's going to be like a 4.5, 4:45, close to 5 hour ride with a lot of race intensity, and I will feel for that very
Yeah.
differently than
No,
what
for
I did
sure.
on Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'd imagine that would be where I would be using the caffeine to kind of lower that perceived exertion a little. Just
Yeah.
on that, Matt, anything kind of, I guess one question I would have for you, you say kind of fasted efforts at times in the zone 2 work, but how How do you approach that? Is that purely when you say that for what your nutrition is, like going into the session and during the session, or even the night before? Do you back off, carbohydrate consumption, or do you take it in the night before and then you're, basically low to no carb during the session?
Mm. I guess overall, if I look back, my general nutritional overview is pretty low carb anyway during a period like this.
Yeah.
So nothing much really has to change. Where it changes if I know that I've got a big day that the next day. So dinner tonight would probably look a little different than regular, if that makes sense.
So
So
yeah,
there's
your point on that would be if tomorrow is more higher intensity threshold type work, then tonight might have a little more carbohydrate just to
a
refresh.
little
Look
top
like,
up.
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Totally
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so Ironman New Zealand. What's for the rest of the year after? Obviously, you're going into a winter, but a kind of nuance for 2024, of course, in New Zealand is the 70.3 Worlds at the end of the year. Any thoughts about that? I'm not sure if you've got a card or a ticket already, or you're thinking about that or not thinking about that. What's your thoughts?
I don't have a ticket at the moment. I don't. And like I mean, it's a race at home, which is amazing. And I'm certainly not there going, I need to find a race to get a ticket. If a race comes up that I manage to get one, then that's amazing. But yeah, I guess for me at the moment, the focus has been in from the start of the year or back end of last year. It's been Ironman New Zealand, so that's where the focus lies at the moment. After that, we'll see how we go. Chances are probably a bit of redemption there, and Cairns could be an opportunity. Um, and we'll just see how things play out. I mean, beyond that, things are not too haven't got too much planned after that. And it's a matter of, I guess, just seeing how these two, definitely first one, Ironman New Zealand, plays out.
So, your last, well, sorry, I should say 2022. No, 2023 was 2023. It was 4 hours 33 on the bike. To
Mm,
hang on, you think, I mean, every day is different, every race is different always, obviously, but in the pro field, to hang on and to be in the mix of the maybe not the front pack, but the front packs, let's just put it that way.
yeah,
Where do you think that bike needs to be at for Ironman New Zealand course?
yeah, it's probably going to be between that 4:15 and 4:25, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
right.
mean, given conditions, who knows what's happening? But
Yeah.
generally speaking, I think so. I mean, it's not a fast course. It is
Yeah.
tough. It is tough. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we'll see how things play out. But and it's a matter of kind of racing to what's on the road, what's in front of you, and what's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I guess a bit of a ballpark as to where things should be
How
at.
would you contrast it like the Utah course, which you rode 443, and it is up and down, obviously, but
Mm.
how would you contrast New Zealand to that?
Yeah, there's a lot more. I guess I was playing Utah very safe in terms of what was to come, especially with Snow Canyon at the back end and a bit of climbing through the midsection. So I think New Zealand is obviously the elevation is not as much, but at the same time you've got opportunities to be able to um, make speed where possibly you couldn't in Utah. I think on a lot
Uh,
of those sort of downhills where you can actually get into the big chainring and just find some gear and go. Whereas Utah, there was a lot of you couldn't do that to some degree because it was too much.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Hey, so I just coming back just to maybe finish up, but you mentioned earlier about, some kind of more specific rest and recovery as a function of like the periodized open up those windows maybe for some of that. Is there anything specific that you're doing more or less of in the spirit of recovery, like practices or nutrition or even strength building or anything specific that comes to mind that you're kind of adding to the protocol in the spirit of improving recovery?
I'm doing a lot more. I guess a lot more running in my race shoes, which
Okay.
are carbon, and I honestly think that that's having. I'm pulling up a lot better off that, just from the absorption of the shoe, and the soreness is not as detrimental as not doing that. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
right.
every run is in that shoe, but there's a lot of the key stuff is in there, which typically has got intensity in it.
What are you running in
Um,
at the moment, if you don't mind saying?
the Hocus
Okay.
carbon
Okay.
Rocket X's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just a little less clunky and chunky from the Nikes that I was in the Alphas, and yeah, they're I'm enjoying them. I'm
That's
enjoying them.
cool.
We're playing with the ice a little bit, but also very mindful that there's a time and a place to use that.
I,
Um,
I saw your post of that on Instagram, and frankly, it doesn't look like there should be a time and place for that behavior. But anyway, whatever.
yeah. I mean, we don't want to. There's an element of blunting too much of the response that's going on, but also
Right.
at the same time to have some stimulus to be able to back up the following day is like as I say, there's a time and place for it. So yeah, mucking around with that, or not mucking around, but including that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's
Key
I
things.
guess
Right.
in
Right.
terms of it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, buddy, it's just great to catch up again, and really looking forward to getting behind you in 24. Every race is just a challenge to get to the starting line. We're all in your corner and in your camp, and we love watching you and your progress as a new professional athlete. Thanks for coming and spending some time with us today.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you again, Leighton. And yeah, no, we look forward to a prosperous 2024 ahead.
Absolutely, Bob. Well, we'll catch you up there on the trails or on the roads the next little while, and fingers crossed, maybe we can see you at some of the US racing in the not too distant future.
I think so. Be on. Thanks, mate.
All right, bud. Talk to you soon. Bye.
See ya.
Thanks, folks, for joining, and we'll catch up soon. And next week we'll be having another one of our elites join the show, and we'll make sure we get that out and shared with all. Thanks again for joining. Go longer. Bye.